Okay, let's see. All right. It says we are live. We are now apparently a minute early, but that's okay. Hey guys, welcome to an extremely early show today, my regular Wednesday night live stream. I'm so thrilled to have the fantastic Senator Jim Molan, who was formerly a member of the military. You were a general major, am I right? Yes.
Major General here. Major General.
Major General. He's now in politics, and he's dealt with the left media. He's dealt with the far right, and now he's finally dealing with me. No, just kidding.
And I hope that you are a lot more amenable to my charms, dear, than the left ever was. They took no notice of me at all.
Well, that's good and bad. Okay, before we begin, I wanted to sort of clarify something. You've dealt with so much in your life, but you were afraid of coming on my show, weren't you? You were scared of this little girl.
Nothing causes me fear, dear. But because I didn't know you, why should I come on your show? But no, I'm not afraid of anything.
Because I'm a delight.
A few other things I won't tell you about.
You should have come on my show because I'm a sheer delight. That's
no, you are yet to prove that to me, but I'm open to you convincing me of that.
Well, fair enough. I don't know whether you saw the advertisement going out, but it was a photo. No. It was a selfie of you and I. Because I met you.
Yes, you sent me that photo. That's a good photo. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I thought you'd like that.
Besties.
Well, I want to begin with the topic of your career because it seems to be a trend. It's not just you. I can also name Ricardo Bossi as someone else who was in the military. What do you think it is about this transition from military into politics? And first of all, what did you learn being in the military? What kind of an experience was that for you?
Well, it was a long experience, dear. I had 40 years in the military. I joined when I was 17 in my first year, turned 17 in my first year in the military. And so there's a million things that you learn and you grow. And the military is an extraordinary organisation. It's in many ways, it's more than a vocation. It's like being in the priesthood. You commit yourself entirely to it, and your family finds a similar commitment. And you can either stay for a short period of time, or as I did, I went from my year 12 at school into a 4-year officer training course, 3 years of which was a university course at UNSW, and then 1 year of officer training. And since then, my family and I have lived in 36 different houses. So we moved and moved and moved because the military is all over the place, and the work the military does is all over the place. The longest place I've ever been in one place for, the longest physical place I've ever been in that place for, is Jakarta. And we had 5 years in Jakarta, in the Australian Embassy in Jakarta. So the military, we need the best and brightest in our military, and we're getting them. This nation is facing the most unpredictable times strategically it's faced since 1945. And our military is of very high quality, but it's tiny. And that's something which I have got to address with government. And it's something which government has got to address. We need the quality in the people now, so that should we need to get much bigger and much nastier and to be able to fight over a much longer period, we've got people who can lead people. So you learn, it's like life, you learn an infinite amount. But I guess the main thing that I learned is that nothing is more important than people. In this technological age, in Iraq, I was chief of operations in Iraq. I ran the war for the American general in Iraq. I sat at the centre of the most advanced military headquarters the world has ever seen, with information in all forms coming in every different way you can imagine. But what was most important, where did the boss go to when he wanted something done? He went to an individual. So, and he spent his in any 7-day week, he would spend 4 of those 7 days out in the field, travelling around, meeting the commanders, meeting the governors, etc. If he wanted something done, he spoke to a human being. People, and we'd both agree with this, I'm sure, people are still the most important element of everything.
No, I do agree. I need to backtrack for a second. I forgot to do my ordinary tradition. Guys, give me a sec. I have 3 Bible verses I want to read from 1 John, verses 7 to 9. But if we walk in the light as he is in the light, we have fellowship one with another, and the blood of Jesus Christ, his son, cleanseth us from all sin. If we say that we have no sin, we deceive ourselves, as the truth is not in us. If we confess our sins, he is faithful and just to forgive us our sins and to cleanse us from all unrighteousness. Okay, now I can continue. I was going to say that's sort of...
But if you quote the Bible to me, I got to quote the Bible back to you. You see.
Okay.
And my favourite psalm is something which I use in the military.
Oh, yes. Okay.
I've used it on 2 occasions just recently. One a couple of years ago when a young captain who would have been in his late 20s, as a group of 3 people was killed by an Afghan soldier by friendly fire. The guy was a sergeant within that organisation, and he came and turned his gun from facing out and killed these 3 Australians. And I gave the eulogy at his funeral. And he was a young man who never got to marry, to have children, to have grandchildren. I was asked to give the eulogy because I was instrumental in him joining the military. And the second was a mate of mine who was a superb soldier from the Vietnam War, and he died a couple of weeks ago. He was a man who between the years of 1965 and 70, he spent as part of the Australian Training Team Vietnam, one of our most decorated and most warlike fighting organisations, spent all or part of every year in Vietnam. A young soldier, a fabulous fellow, a father, grandfather, and a mate of my wife and mine. And I was asked to give his eulogy as well. And whenever I do things like that, I always quote Psalm 144, because so often the Christians think, the world think that Christians are soft, kind of.
Yeah, a lot of them are.
Oh, that's right. And you know, it's like people used to regard the Jews before the time of Israel as an easy mark, as people to be pushed around. And Psalm 144 is my favourite, and it is, "Praise be the Lord my rock, who trains my hands for war, my fingers for battle. He is my loving God and my fortress, my stronghold and my deliverer, my shield in whom I take refuge." And in my view, dear, we as a Christian nation, and the Western world with Judeo-Christian tradition should never, ever be seen by our enemies as a pushover. We aim to push over. Christianity is tough, it's compassionate, but it has a long tradition of fighting for what it believes in.
That is true. However, I don't mean to get into any sort of a debate here. There are two sorts of Christians. Well, there's actually many denominations, and we know this. But what I mean when I say 2 sorts of Christians, there are those that I fall under where that is, yes, be stronger. Yes, don't be so liberal. Yes, don't let leftism infiltrate its way into the church. But some Christians are adamant that God wants of the Levitical law, right? So like, gays should be still stoned, transgender people should be killed. I don't agree. I believe that we need to give our enemies salvation, not give it to them, but like give them the option. What do you think of that? And this is not where I thought the interview would go, but I do think it's an interesting question to ask you, because you are a Christian and Christianity is absolutely cucked, as PC Leaks Pete here has stated. It is cucked. What do you think of that? Do you think gays... That's his name. That's his online name. Do you think we need to be hard like the Levitical law, or do you think that's too hard? I think that's too
No,
hard.
when you're challenged, I don't know what you mean by Levitical law.
Like throwing gays.
I don't really. No,
I'm
I'm not asking what you mean by it because it's irrelevant to my life.
Okay.
I'm a small L liberal in a country which allows a variety of beliefs. I don't force my beliefs on anyone. I don't expect anyone to force their beliefs on me. What I do expect is that in all areas, we particularly as Christians, that we treat everyone in a compassionate way. And your viewers should be aware that there are many, many different types of people. And in the military, you have gays, you have trans, you have fabulous soldiers who are gays and trans. We have a long tradition of homosexuality in militaries throughout human history. Alexander the Great, to have preconceptions about these things and to be blind to the charity which certainly I believe that God expects of me when I talk to anyone.
Yeah.
Now, I might have regarded you as deeply suspicious, dear, but
I have a look. I have a look.
Yeah, how could I have been so wrong? But this is what I'm saying.
It happens a lot.
Let's all keep an open mind to most things and treat everyone fairly and equally.
I feel like you're advocating what I do, which is individualism. Good. Treat people as individuals. Don't class them all in their collective. Yeah, like you can class as much as you want on a collective level based on behavior, based on a stereotype. But then when you get an individual up close and personal, that's always a different scenario. Yeah, completely. All right, let's talk a little bit about you're a Liberal Party member.
Yep.
The Liberal Party is supposed to be the mainstream conservative party, the traditional party. But upon my research in the last 3 years, I stopped calling myself a conservative. I didn't like the title anymore because the Conservatives brought in gay marriage. The Conservatives brought in abortion. The Conservatives are the ones who are supposed to be conserving traditionalism, and they're not. How do you counter-argue that? Or how do you feel being a part of that machine?
I rationalise it very easily.
Okay.
There is no political party that you or I will ever believe in everything that they say. In a liberal democracy,
True.
It is impossible to find. I could search forever and ever and ever. I could go back to Rick Bossy and I could say to Ricardo, mate, what do you stand for? And I would find things that Rick doesn't like. He would find things that I don't like.
Of course.
Not many people will vote for Rick for a whole bunch of reasons, and a large number of people voted for me for a whole bunch of different reasons. So I believe that the Liberal Party represents a group of people across the spectrum of Australian society, to bring small L liberal views into how we govern. Now, we may not be perfect, but the greatest achievement that we have is that we keep being put into government by the Australian people. Now, I'm not into government for government's sake. I'm into government for two reasons. Firstly, you can do things when you're in government. And anyone who says, when you look at what this government has achieved, from Tony Abbott's time, from 2013 onwards, 2007 onwards.
Okay.
2013 onwards, when you look at what we've achieved, and you put it into a column of good and bad things, the good things will well and truly outweigh the bad things. So the first reason that I'm prepared to be a member of this government is that we do things, and most of those things, if not all of those things, have very good aspects to them. Secondly, what we do really, really well is we keep Labor Green governments out of this country. If you reckon we have faults, try Labor Green governments. We've tried them for years and years and years. They screw this country, they screw values, and they are not good for this country or for the future of Australia. So what do? You can form your own one-person party or a very small party, and guess what? You will get nowhere. So in a broad church party, such as most of the, certainly Labor and Liberal have a number of views. What defines how successful we are is how within those parties those views are reconciled. Now, Scott Morrison has reconciled those views better than his previous two predecessors. And in my small exposure to the party now, since about 2011, I first became active in the party in about 2011 when we were in opposition at the federal level. In my observation of the party, we have never been more unified. You may not like gay marriage.
I don't.
Well, there you are. You don't have to like it. But try Labor and Greens alternative.
What's the?
You just don't like gay marriage. Fair enough.
No, I don't. Like I feel like civil unions were sufficient. I don't understand why so when you say try Labor, like how would gay marriage be different in this country had it been them? What is the what do you mean?
It wouldn't be different. It wouldn't be any different at all.
Then why say try them?
Gay marriage.
But why say
gay marriage?
Yeah, but why did you say try them?
Try them for all their policies. If you want moronic, all the policies that they have.
No, I just didn't know what you meant. Yeah.
Socialist, extremist green. I'm as green as they get, but I'm a logical, sensible green, unlike the Greens.
I understand that.
No world is perfect. If you're going to try and find a perfect person to vote for, best of luck. Life is life, and particularly politics is full of compromise, dear, and that's how I look at it. The greatest achievement of the coalition government is that we keep Australia out of the hands as often as possible from a Labor Greens government. Now you've got to respect the Australian people. That's the basis of our democracy, and the Australian people have said yes, we'll give a tiny little majority to the coalition in the House of Reps. And we'll give no majority in the Senate. Now, the House of Reps enables you to form government, but you can't actually govern without controlling the Senate. So, regardless of what my views are or your views are, the fairness and the beauty of democracy is that it's not just you and me that matters. There's 25 million of us in this country, all of whom matter, all of whom have a view. And whether we like it or not, I'd rather we control the Senate because I'd like to do lots more things. Regardless of whether we like it or not, we don't control the Senate. Every time we have a vote in the Senate, we have to compromise. We have to take into a range of views that may not accord with what we would like to do, but we have still achieved amazing things. You look at the legislation that's been passed in the last year. It is absolutely astonishing. We have moved in a national security sense, in a fairness sense, in an economic sense, to the betterment of more human beings in this country, I believe, than any other time.
You mean like more immigrants?
No, in fact, the number of immigrants has been limited, hasn't it? You must know that for sure.
Well, it has, because that's because of COVID. That's not because of your. That's not
no. It was limited before that. We were bringing 190. Certainly was 190,000 people into this country in permanent positions. Now we're bringing about 250,000 each year in temporary visas, students and a range of other people. We dropped it from 190,000 back to 160,000. A percentage of those are family reunions. The rest are supposedly coming into Australia for the benefit of Australia because they bring skills. Okay,
that's good. That's good.
But it is good, but of course COVID's smashed that now, and no one's coming in. But it'll get back. Now, in my humble view, we are bringing in far too many migrants. Simply for the fact that our infrastructure is not keeping ahead of it. I agree. On New South Wales, the New South Wales government, I'm a New South Wales senator, the New South Wales government is spending billions on infrastructure, but it can't get ahead of the continual growth of Sydney. And COVID is forcing people to live in the country where I live. I live down on the Monero, on the edge of the Monero. And it is the most beautiful part in the world. I've always tried to live in rural areas. I'm not big on cities.
That's completely fair. No, I mean, I'm the daughter of immigrants, and I'm thinking there's too many immigrants. Like, if a first generation Australian says it, it must be true. This
Well,
go.
yeah.
What were you gonna say? I was just gonna say this is.
I was distracted by the sign there, but I'll stop reading the signs as they come up.
No. I was gonna pop it up, but I feel like you were gonna say something. Did you want to respond to what I just said?
I've forgotten entirely what. Yeah, you're right, and the support that we got from border control, particularly from the Vietnamese community, was absolutely superb.
I had Vietnamese for lunch today.
Yeah, very, very, very good.
Delicious.
And this is the essence of it. When people come to Australia, they come to Australia to be Australians, and they come to Australia to be part of Australia. And
yes.
Most of our communities have been very, very successful.
Yes, that's very true. Okay, guys, please hold your questions to the end of the 15 minutes, but because someone put one up, it'll disappear. So I am going to ask it, but don't do that again until the end, please. Reg Penny, you should know better, Reg. You're a regular watcher. Former Major General Molan.
Come on, Reg, do as you're told, Reg.
Yeah, do as you're told. Since China will most likely spark World War III by invading Taiwan, should Australia reinstate national service and armed Australia to hold off a possible invasion from China? That was hard to read with the grammar. Go.
Do you want me to answer that now, Deb?
Yeah, do it now because it'll disappear later, and then I won't be able to re-ask the question.
Okay. This is what I spend most of my time dealing with, and I call it national security. And national security has got only a bit to do with the military. It's got as much to do with our education system, our social cohesion, our ability to manufacture things in Australia, and self-reliance in Australia. Certainly one of these scenarios, and the point that I make to everyone from the PM down, and I've just done a 6-part podcast series called Noise Before Defeat, which is, it's as I say, about 6 20-minute podcasts explaining what I mean by national security and exactly the kind of question that Reg has got there. The point I'm making is that it's not just possible that war may occur between the United States and China. It's much more likely than most people think. And I would put it in terms of probable. It's not inevitable, Reg, I'd say, but it is possible, going towards, well and truly going towards probable. Both sides are armed to the teeth. China believes it's got reasons for going to war. And if we look back over a recent period of time, 500 years, the last 500 years, Reg, there has been a rise, on 16 occasions, Reg, there has been a rising power such as China trying to overtake a ruling power such as America. And of those 16 occasions in 500 years, war has occurred in 12 of those occasions. Now, that's not good odds, not good odds at all. That's what we are going through at the moment, and that's what we've got to prepare for. And I generally agree with what you're saying. What I think your meaning behind that is that we are not prepared, and we're not prepared. Coronavirus has shown us how extraordinarily vulnerable we are.
Indeed.
And one of the ways that this might occur might be through Taiwan. I hope China is not that stupid. I don't believe that China would try to invade Australia without America becoming involved. So it becomes a little bit more complicated than you've got there. I think we need to go one more significant step. That is China starting to do much more than it is now. God, it's doing enough now. But we are not going to take this society from where it is now mentally and physically into national service and armed Australia. Reg, you may not be aware that 300 people of, I assume, your age will have a birthday each year. 300,000, 150,000 women, 150,000 men. And if we're going to, we don't need an army of 600,000 people. Firstly, there's no point having an army giving them 2 boots and a rifle. That's pointless. If you're going to have a military that can fight like Israel's, you've got to not just give them a salary and a gun. You've got to give them, the most expensive, the most complicated. It'd be 10 times the salary of a soldier for what backs each and every soldier up. So I don't think we're anywhere near national service. We're nowhere near armed Australia, but I believe we should be preparing. We do not have a national strategy for facing the kind of scenarios that Reg is talking about, and that's where we got to start.
Thank you for answering that. And look, someone's saying, bravo, Jim Molan, a man overflowing with integrity, morality, and patriotism. The best guest apparently I've ever had is you. Isn't that nice?
What great viewers you've got, dear.
I do.
Thank
I have
you
great
very
viewers.
much to whoever said that. Thank you.
Home brand rules. I do have a question. You know that I'm friends also with Ricardo Bossi, don't you?
Yep.
Why did you put him last on the ticket?
Oh, he had some. I told him. Firstly, I didn't. The party did.
Oh,
This is in the Eden Monaro by-election.
Eden Monaro by-election.
He had some on his website. He had some more extreme views on that website than most Liberals or Conservatives or right of centre voters would have been prepared to accept in Eden Monaro. I told Rick that. I've known Rick for years. Yeah,
I'm aware. Did you guys know each other ever? Did you cross paths in the military world?
We may have once or twice, but since I got out, and I've been out for 12 years now, so this is another life.
For sure.
But we've shared platforms, and I've got great respect for him.
Yeah, he said the same about you. He said the same about you to me. Yeah, no, he likes you. He likes you. Yeah.
I like him too. Yeah.
No, yeah, exactly. I want to ask you, because you're a military man, and because you asked me before we went live what we would talk about. This is something that has been on my mind a lot lately. Do you think men today are men, or do you think the majority of men, even men who claim to be alpha males and all that crap, if you feel the need to say that, you're not really much of a man. I feel like a military man is a true man, because you do as you're told, you have technique, you have method, you learn this and you don't complain, blah, 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 blah. Whereas men today behave and act like women. They're passive aggressive. They hold on to little things and have grudges like women and remember it forever. And then, seek revenge. I don't feel like a man like you operates that way. What do you have a commentary on men today as opposed to from your generation?
I've never. It's interesting that you're the first person that's ever asked me that question.
Good. I'm glad.
So I've never really considered it. It's never been something in the front of mind. But what I would say is,
tell me.
As I say, I joined the army in 1968, and in 1972. I graduated in December 71, was posted my first posting. From then I was dealing with average young Australians who were joining the military.
Okay.
Entirely. That was my entire life. So I think I had a view of average Australians, not the kind of professionals that so many talk about, university educated, kind of upper middle class if you're into classes. Much more sophisticated people. These are true blue dinkum die Aussies who join the military and who are brilliant. Now, I spent my life commanding these guys, and that's the greatest privilege you could ever have, men and women. And at a certain stage, I got to a position called Commander Australian Defence Colleges, where one of the colleges that I was the boss of was the Australian Defence Force Academy. Now, this was 10 or 11, 12 years ago. I wasn't the commandant. The commandant is the person, he or she actually commands the college. I was their boss. They worked through me, and I commanded all similar colleges in the Australian Defence Force. And I was very interested to make a judgment between what I was as a cadet and what these people were as a cadet. Now, I had seen no different, because when we bring people in the military, we change them. We bring people in and we socialise them. We don't, we have a degree of pride, and this is not universal, but it's good enough to be spoken of. We don't destroy the individual to make them into something. We keep the individuality. Our soldiers are more individual than any other soldiers I've seen. we encourage good commanders, and I'd like to think I was one, encourage the questioning of our orders whenever those orders can be questioned. You know, I make the joke, and I made it in my first speech to the Parliament, the only order I have ever accepted without question was duck. And you don't want to, if someone says duck, you don't want to say why.
So it's not Peking. It's not Peking duck. It's not Peking duck.
Absolutely. And I made that joke, and it's a joke, of course. But we have a very good military for the simple reason that we utilise the talent that comes from every level of the military. And if you look at, just go back and look at our VC winners, the most visible of our young soldiers of your generation, the ones who are still alive, of course, they are extraordinary people. When you look at their background, read some of their books and their lives, all of whom have written about their lives. When you read the backgrounds they came from great working class backgrounds with all the problems and all the hang-ups that I had and that maybe you had and that others have, and yet the army puts them into a situation where they can be successful. And now, I mean, they are fabulously successful. They're inspirational. So it's not a question I've seen. I don't think I.
Was it a good question?
Sorry.
Was it a good question?
Oh, good question. I just don't know the answer to it. I tell you what. I spent 5 years in our embassy in Jakarta as a diplomat, a military diplomat there, and I was inspired by our young foreign affairs officers. They had guts. They had intelligence. They got out and did things. I look at my children, and I've got one child who's a teacher, one in journalism, one in as a lawyer, and one as an airline pilot.
Dear God.
Look at the mates that I see that they've got, and they are quality people.
Good.
You know, we've got enough quality people. You go back and you look at the 1920s in the United Kingdom, and people used to say after the trauma, the appalling trauma where 15 million people died in World War I, the young people who were going through the best universities in the UK said they would never, ever fight for their country again because the First World War was so appalling. Well, of course they did. When evil appears, people react to that evil. And how do we know how anyone will react until they're tested? Yeah, that's what I'd say. You know, when you look at a group of soldiers, you can never tell who the heroes are. Sometimes the heroes are very, very unusual people.
Yes, no, I think that's completely accurate. But would you? This is something that I think is lacking today in the military. You learn compliance, obedience, critical thinking, strategy, how to make your own bed, simple, basic things like that. Whereas today's generation, and I could possibly even include myself in this on some level. I'm sure I don't. I'm sure I don't qualify on some level, but I'm not. You know, I'm definitely an obedient daughter, but I was never so obedient like during school and even with the government now, even with the mask mandate here in Melbourne, you're supposed to wear a mask indoors. I'm at Woolies every other day and I've not worn it once. I go to bookstores, I've not worn it once. And people look at me and I just don't give a crap. I just don't wear it. But sorry, the point of my story, the point of saying all that was that is what is lacking today in our men and in our girls. Like there's no obedience where the obedience should be. And where people aren't obedient, it's like, well, everyone's wearing the mask because they feel like they have to be compliant. You know, the government is here to help you. Just listen to the government. It's just, as a Christian, and also two types of Christians, because there are many Christians that are doing it. I'm not one of those Christians doing it. I'm actually rebelling against that. Screw compliance. That's right, Nick DeSport.
Well, you fair enough. You can do what you like in this country until, of course, you get slammed with a fine. I don't know whether the black-shirted police down in Victoria are still slamming people with fines or not.
Well, I'm yet to get one. Oh, I don't want to get
fair
one.
Enough. But when you get one, you should pay it because
I might not.
Well, fair enough. I would say you should pay it.
I would, but I might.
No, fair enough, because that's a law. And what makes our society different?
It's not in the Constitution, Jim. It's not in the Constitution, Jim. It's not in the Constitution, Senator
most
Jim
laws
Molan.
aren't in the Constitution. Most laws aren't in the Constitution. If you only obey the laws that are in the Constitution, then I'm not going to drive on the same roads as you. You know, what makes this country different and our society different from a lot of other countries is that we are a nation of rules. Now, if you could indulge me for 1 second, I spent a lot of my time when I was in Indonesia bringing senior Indonesians to Australia to experience what Australia was like. Indonesia was just emerging from a very closed society. They had a great suspicion of us, and there were two countries they really were interested in. The first one was Israel. Find that hard, don't you, to believe? But they were very interested in Israel. Second, and they still are to this very day. The second is Australia. And I would bring groups of 10 Indonesian generals to Australia, take them around, show them the military, meet Australians, and they would learn about Australia. And I remember we were waiting for our transport, standing in front of some hotel somewhere in Sydney, and one of the generals said to me, he said, you know, you're a funny country. He said, you're not like us in Indonesia, where if a general enters the room, everyone springs to attention and salutes, kind of thing. And
we do like respect on a certain level.
Yes, but we don't do that. You see,
no,
we would stand. But he said you're very much like the Israelis in that you're not into these kind of symbols of it. But you have very great respect, and your society is based on laws. And he said, look around. We were standing on the front steps of this hotel. He said, look at that. He said, no parking. No speeding, no this, no that. He said, and what's amazing is that with all these rules, unlike in Jakarta where no one even stops at a red light, unlike in Jakarta, in Australia, everyone obeys the rules. Now you can decide whether you want to obey this rule or not, and I will. I believe, regardless of what I think of a rule, because I am nominally a rule maker, I make laws for a living now. I will obey laws. I don't walk across friggin' streets with a red light when there's no car within 10 kilometres. I say to myself, Jim, you make friggin' laws, you obey them. And that's just me. There you are.
That is just you. Daniel Andrews ain't doing that. Daniel Andrews is he's walking around like he's king shit, and he's actually, you know, he's not. All right, the audience have questions, so from this point onwards, I may interject if I think of something, but the audience wants to ask you different things. So this is Daniel H. Jim, do you think Australia would do well if we became a constitutional republic like the USA?
The question I'd ask is the USA doing well?
I was thinking that too. I was
thinking doing very well at all. No, I'm not. I think we've got a very good system of government. I see no indication that we will change in the future. I've lost a lot of faith in the British monarchy because of their mindless position particularly on climate change. When we lose the Queen, I think it'll be up for grabs. And I had a lot of respect for both the young princes, but I think they've both gone a bit strange. And of course, Prince Charles is totally strange, but the system of government we have is a fabulous system of government. I don't care what people think I am when I say that, and a lot of people are in the Republic. I'm not a monarchist because I don't want to be called a monarchist. I am an Australian person who believes in the Australian government and the way that our system works. That's it. Two of the greatest nutters I've ever laid eyes on.
Easily, we agree completely. Easily.
There you are.
I haven't read it yet. It's just a background for now, but
fair enough.
I will read it.
You know, we've got a very good system of government. It's our system of government. It's developed away from the British system of government. Nothing goes to the Queen. We all know that. And to think that we don't run it as Australians is just denying the facts.
Well, have you ever heard of the movie V for Vendetta?
So sorry, say that again. I got distracted by home brand rules again.
Yeah, no, home brand rules is asking good questions. No, have you ever heard of a movie called V for Vendetta?
Oh yes, absolutely.
It's a political film.
Years ago with my son.
It's good. And in that movie, they say government should be afraid of its people, and people shouldn't be afraid of their governments. But that's just not the case. And that's just not the case here either. We fear our government. That's not good. We should revolt. I don't mean revolt like with guns or anything. I just mean that we should do some sort of like Italy did recently. Italy opened all of its restaurants despite what the law stated at the time. The civil disobedience was with over 50,000 restaurants that decided to stay open. I reckon if Australia, and I know I'm talking to a senator and I shouldn't be saying this, but like if Australia did something like that, we would be in a far better position right now, I think. And
would you be happy if your mother and father died because of that, dear?
Because of what, COVID? Because of COVID? Of course not. But they're fine, and I've been tested. I'm not asymptomatic.
Grandparents. How are your grandparents? Are they
all
80
dead.
years old?
They're all dead.
Well, mine and mine are too. But I'm 70 years old. I'm as fit as a Mallee bull.
You're 5 years younger than my father.
Oh, there you are. There you are. You are, even if it's a 0.0001% increase in chance by not wearing a mask, you are probably contributing to the death of innocent people.
But
so if I were you, I would think about that.
I don't buy that narrative, bro.
Okay, fair enough. You don't have to buy the narrative.
Well,
I hope your mum and dad are well.
No, they are. I'm with them right now. Okay, so this is Home Brand Rules. Jim, how often will you be appearing on Catherine McGregor's new show? Often, I hope.
I appeared on, I went on her show on the 29th. I've known Catherine for probably 30 years.
Nice.
When Catherine was Malcolm McGregor was an infantry officer, as I was an infantry officer. She was a fabulous infantry officer. She left the army for a while, or he left the army for a while and became a journo. Came back into the army and was a tremendous give speeches. She never wrote speeches for me because I wasn't important enough, but she wrote speeches for Chief of Army, Chief of Air Force and various people, and she did a great job. I appeared on her show on the 29th of last month, and there was the normal, Sky doesn't get big audiences. About 30,000 people watched it and a large number on Facebook. But after the show, 290,000 people have downloaded that show. Now, think about that. 2,000.
That's amazing.
290,000 people downloaded that show when I spoke about China. And Catherine has a very good, I think it's spelt with a C, Home Brands.
It might be.
Oh, there you are. But Kate has a very good interviewing technique, and she is, firstly, she has a spiritual dimension to her. Secondly, she's right of centre, and she's a rock solid conservative. She doesn't play the trans card. And she's been through tough times, and I understand.
I know who you're talking about now. Was she on a panel with Jordan Peterson when he was in the country?
Quite possibly. I didn't see that. I didn't see that, but quite possibly she was.
Yeah, she's cool. She's right.
Very, very good. Yeah, she's very, very good. And I think that, I will go on whenever she asks me to go on. I'm doing a permanent spot with Chris Smith on Sunday nights at 8 o'clock, I think, on Sunday nights when his new show starts. Catherine's got her new show. Do
you have your own podcast? Own one? You have your own podcast too?
I've made a podcast series, but I don't have a channel or anything like that I go out regularly.
Because at CPAC you invited me on your podcast. Do you remember that?
I think you make this up there.
I swear. Before we took the selfie,
I reckon you just make up things.
I wouldn't, but it is true that you said. I think I asked and you said, "Yeah, sure, jump on." But then I'm like, nah, he's just talking.
No, it'd be hard because I don't have a podcast, and at the CPAC I don't think I had even done I might have done the podcast by then, I can't remember. But
you were in a rush to get away from it.
So that podcast's gone extraordinary in Australia and the US. So
that's
if
so
people
good.
are interested in national security, not just the military, but every aspect of it, this takes you through the whole thing.
Yeah.
Now, okay, what are you laughing at?
Just how you go. I think you make this up. That's just funny because I didn't, but I hope I didn't. Should we get rid of the Governor General from Ian?
No, he's a nice guy.
Okay.
He's a nice guy, but I'm sure you're talking about should we become a republic? The question is, if you become a republic, in my view, if you become a republic, who heads it up? And
Ricardo Bossi.
I voted against the republic last time we had Malcolm Turnbull's thing because the only republic that I will ever accept, if I am forced to accept it, and as I've said, I am very happy with today's way of Australia governing itself. The only republic I would ever come close to accept was what was called the minimalist model, which was that we replaced the Governor General with a person called a president, chosen by a panel of judges on the recommendation, I think, of the Prime Minister of the day in a non-political position. That was the McGarvey minimalist model after a Labor Party person who was the Governor of Victoria, a fabulous fellow, who's my sister's father-in-law, now dead, but a fabulous fellow, and he came up with the minimalist model, and that was the only thing I would support. But why change? Why change? Because
I reckon the model in was it Luxembourg or Switzerland is really good, where you vote. Oh, it's like you're allowed to vote, like the citizens that get to stay and all that kind of stuff. Like I reckon that is a relatively good system. Anyway,
and New Zealand's got that system.
Really? Well, they're stuck with that. What's her name? Jacinda Ardern. So it's not a very good system.
There you are. It's not the system. It's the people in the system, if you ask me. But what's it called? A people's referendum. If you get enough signatures, then the government must address the issue that you're talking about, and that's fine. But most people in the world will give their right arm for how we are governed. And
I think that's very accurate.
Yeah, and most people think, I remember I was in Indonesia at the time of our republic referendum in Australia. I remember having a discussion somewhere with an Indonesian friend, and he said, why do you want to change? You have stable, good government. Why do you want to change? That's the question I'd ask.
Yeah. Owen's at 76. Should we shorten term limits? Example, 5 years to 4 years.
Well, that'll be increasing the term limits.
Well, I don't know. His example is incorrect. It should be from 4 years to 3 years or something. But that's just what he's written.
Yeah, at the federal level, we're at 3.
So 3 years to 2 years?
No. If you can't, you might make an argument, but it's not going to happen. It's fantastic to say it, but why would the opposition in any government setup agree to lengthening a term? So it's like mental masturbation. It's fantastic to do, just doesn't get you anywhere.
Indeed.
You can think about it, and you can consider how you might shorten the terms or lengthen the terms, but it ain't going to happen. No. So why don't you think about something which is possible?
Exactly. Star Rover. Australia used to limit immigration to skilled people or who had money to invest in a business creating jobs. Should Australia limit immigration to people who would strengthen and not drain Australia? My opinion on that is yes. But what do you reckon?
Well, I think that's what we do. I've heard the accusation made time and again that we pay for that migration costs us. And at a certain stage of migration and with certain groups of migrants, it does cost us. But we're only bringing in 160,000 per year on a permanent basis. I would limit temporary visas rather than permanent visas, and often without casting aspersions on Star Rover, often sitting behind this, there's a degree of racism. If all the people who are coming into this country come from a country that I like, I might be all for it. But we have a non-discriminatory immigration policy, and we ain't changing that. You know, that it's not going to change. And what we've got to do is manage the consequences.
Yeah, but you don't want to let in terrorists. You don't want to let in people from the countries that are of the land of the religion of peace, and then they come here for a sole purpose because we don't want to discriminate. You don't want to ask all the right questions and vet them. I think we should discriminate. I discriminate all the time. I discriminate against dating 11-year-olds. I discriminate against dating 95-year-olds. Like, discrimination isn't the dirty word people make it out to be. You need to discriminate.
Well, you do, and that's quite correct. But we don't let in terrorists. We let in someone who might turn out to be a terrorist.
I see what you're saying.
So what I'm saying is that I mean, America is just about to change its rules back where they let in no one from any Muslim countries. Remember, President Trump brought out the rule. Biden's about to change that.
It was a temporary. It was a temporary I forgot the word, and it was actually originally devised by Barack Obama, which people lack.
Oh well, no, you're quite correct. You're quite correct on that. Yes. But and if you found
only Trump was racist. When Barack Obama did it, no one mentioned it.
Oh, of course, as that famous Thai president of the United States, President Obama. But you're right. You can discriminate in certain areas, and we discriminate. You know, we give certain benefits to people who are citizens of this country, and that's the ultimate discrimination. And yet, people wanted us to be paying students job keeper at a rate. Students who'd come to Australia to work temporarily in Australia whilst they studied, having made an agreement that when they came to Australia they would be financially independent. We all of a sudden, people expect them to be paid the same as a citizen who has paid tax, and whose parents have paid tax, and you know, so discrimination is there. I forget what the question was, dear, but let's move on.
Oh yeah, we can move on. But you did respond to that person. Okay, so Philip Cunningham. This is very much a white nationalist question, but are you concerned that young white men are very pissed off?
Well, I didn't know they were.
Well, I mean, it's kind of true that today, to be a white, straight Christian male, you're up against the worst. Like, because feminism and liberalism penetrates our judicial system. Even when Julia Gillard was in office, she got rid of perjury as an excuse for men in custody battles. And so men have to, like, what if the woman is a piece of crap mother, but because she's a woman, she gets to keep her kids? Like, yeah. So that's not what this guy's asking, but there is a point.
I said the point. So yeah. No culture lasts more than one generation, and we have got to continually fight and strive for our own culture, for what we believe our culture to be. My ancestors were Irish.
Oh, lovely.
They came from a country. They came from a country which had been dominated by the United Kingdom for 800 years. They came from a country where they came to Australia because they were being starved out. They came from a country where they had no rights. They came from a country where the British joke, and I served in the British Army, the British joke was still of the drunk Irishman. Why were they drunk? For exactly the same as Aboriginals have an alcohol problem, because they're dispossessed. So my predecessors came from that background.
Sure.
They were Catholics suppressed by an organisation which was not Catholic. So you know, we have made relatively good Australian citizens. So,
Irish people have, yeah.
But then so have Lebanese people, so have Jewish people, so have Indian people. Just because they beat us in the bloody cricket, you know. This is the value of this nation, in that we've got to be accepting. I wouldn't. Anyone who says that young white men have privilege, tell them to stick it. Don't take them seriously. Don't engage with them. the one thing that I have learned in my short time in politics, being abused, 300 times a day, is never try to answer the question that your abuser puts to you. Counterattack. That's what you've got to do. You've got to do it if you take Twitter seriously. That's what you've got to do on Twitter. If you are in debates and people go for you because you're white, you counterattack with a racist accusation at them.
Yeah, well, because it is racism. It's not reverse racism. It's just racism.
It is. It is pure and absolute racism, so I would not take any of these fools who attack us on the basis. No, I don't know what your second name, the derivation of your second name, your ethnic background is.
Me or the guy asking the question?
No. You look as white as I am. You look like a white female to me.
I'm Colombian. I'm Spanish.
Oh, there you are.
Yeah.
See, and what were Colombians, of Spanish or Portuguese? Spanish, I guess, aren't you? Isn't there?
The Colombians speak Spanish. Yeah, the Spaniards conquered there. Yeah.
Yep, and of course that's a combination of the native peoples in those countries as well.
Yes, I have native ancestry. Yes.
Yeah, well, there you are. Why would someone call you white when what they mean is someone? I've got on in life from a lower middle class family of Irish who believed that they were persecuted. My parents believed they were deeply persecuted because they were Catholics, and they had a reason to believe that they were persecuted because they were Catholic. Yeah. They might have been, absolutely. I have never, ever been persecuted or suffered because of the religion that I have in my entire life. Now, that's the creation of that generation. My mother understood that hard work and education gets you ahead. That's not white privilege. If some fool comes to me and says, "Oh, you're just an old white man," yeah, well, I am white, I guess, and I am old, and I am a man. But I would immediately counterattack on the basis I would either not talk to them or not reply, or I'd counterattack on the basis that they are appallingly racist people and get out of my face. Philip, I hope that makes sense to you, mate.
I think that was a very good answer. Australian Protectionist Party, hey, thanks for coming on. Since early 2020, Australian cities have been subjected to unprecedented overhead aircraft activity like spotter planes, drones, police helicopters, and even RAAF jets. Why are they there?
I think the answer to that...
I didn't even know any of that.
No, I think the answer to that is that you really need to check your level of paranoia. Oh. They're overhead because aeroplanes fly in the air. If you think you are being spied on every single day of the week, really, take a chill pill, go out and sit under a tree somewhere until it passes. The Australian Protectionist Party, I don't know what the Australian Protectionist Party stands for. Is it economic protection or is it protection of rights or something? I'd be a bit worried about your view of Australia. Police helicopters are there to catch bad guys. RAF jets are there for war. Drones are there because they deliver food to my front yard. They did on one occasion. There was a trial down here where I live because it's a rural area, and that Mexican food organisation, fast food organisation with a Mexican name, I forget what it's called. Doesn't matter. They were providing
Tex-Mex, Taco Bill.
That's it. That first one, the first one you had.
Tex-Mex. Okay.
Yeah, the drone. I ordered. I said, I've got to see this. I've got to see how this works. And so I ordered it, and it was the funniest thing I have ever seen. This little bloody drone flies overhead. It's got a little basket of food underneath it. It landed on my front driveway and left the food for us. Yeah, it was okay. The food was okay, and the drone flew away. So
there you go.
There you are. I can't answer anything more on that one, I'm afraid.
No, that's all right. I'm going to keep going down. If I miss any questions, it's accidental, but we are heading towards the end of our time together.
Yep.
Let's see. Pissy Leaks Pete, do you believe a government will ever repeal 18C racial discrimination laws?
I'd love to see aspects of them repealed. I don't know. I guess the fact that anyone can be can feel insulted and threatened by what people say and do, I think opens up an area which is just unmanageable. We've seen it, gross abuses of 18C, but I think the practicality of a government picking what it's going to fight, what issue it's going to take on. People say to me, "Why don't we ban the ABC?" Well, I'd have to say I'd vote for banning most of the ABC. But do you really want to pick up? Do you really want to pick a fight with the ABC leading into an election? A lot of people in Australia who vote for us believe the ABC, but they vote for us. Pete, I can't answer that. I don't know. I don't see any great desire to do it at the moment.
Okay, Ian Moore. So is China racist, Korea racist, India racist? I don't think they are. I think ethno-nationalism is, for whatever reason, permitted in those countries. And in Australia, ethno-nationalism is seen as racist when it shouldn't be. Australia was predominantly white. I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting it to remain predominantly European. What are your thoughts, Senator?
I've lived in many, many countries in the world.
Yes, you have.
And I would consider Australia to be the least racist of any country I've lived in. You want racism, you go and talk to a Javanese. You want racism, you go and talk to an Arab.
There you go.
Indians, I don't know India very, very well at all. You would have to say that Han Chinese are very, very racist. But where does it get us making
those? It exists everywhere, doesn't it?
It exists absolutely everywhere. And if we were all perfect, it would never exist anywhere.
Oh, absolutely. But we are flawed. We are a flawed species.
Yeah, we're flawed as human beings, and I guess we must try and be not flawed as human beings. But my view is that Australia is the least racist country I've ever lived in, and I've lived in most of them.
I believe you. What advice would you give to incoming President Joe Biden on Middle East foreign policy? Do you expect him to keep the great relationships with several Sunni Arab states that Trump has strengthened? Good question.
I don't think the deals have been done on the recognition of Israel in relation to that. The advice that I would give Joe Biden on Middle East foreign policy is, if he wishes to go back on the Iranian deal that limited their ability to gain a nuclear weapon, then by all means do it, but realise the consequences. And the consequences are, at the moment, that the source of most of terrorism and problems in the Middle East is Iran. Iran and Hezbollah, Iran and Hamas, Iran and the Houthis, Iran directly against Saudi. And none of these countries are perfect. They're all strange countries. But at the moment, I would suggest to you, I'd suggest to President Biden that the Middle East is, if he releases the full power of the Iranians, particularly in the way that Obama did, which was to give them billions and billions and billions of dollars, as of last October, the prohibition on selling arms to Iran was no longer applicable under the JCPOA, Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. And guess who stood up to provide arms to Iran? China and Russia. And the Iranians, of course, now are well and truly advanced on higher levels of refining of uranium, which will move them very close, I think, towards being able to produce a bomb. So the Middle East is still of great interest to us all. It's less of interest to the United States because the United States is self-sufficient in oil. And I would say that he shouldn't make too many changes in the Middle East.
This is a fellow military man asking you a question now. Jesse,
Okay.
Hello, sir. What are your thoughts on correcting the problems with DVA and the epidemic of veteran suicides?
Yeah, this is probably the biggest question that we're facing in this area at the moment, and this will have to be my last question.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm glad I ended it on that one. That's a good question.
The way to handle this, the way to handle veteran suicides is to accept that the National Commissioner for Veteran Suicides, in the form of the legislation that we have put through, that we are proposing, that Labor, the Greens and some in the crossbench stood against, should be passed immediately. The National Commissioner for Veteran Suicides is far, far better and more effective than a Royal Commission, and many of the fears of veterans are being exploited by various politicians for those politicians' own ends. Of course, so that's what I'd say. The epidemic of veteran suicides should be handled by the National Commissioner for Veteran Suicide, which has now been unnecessarily held up for months. We should do it, and we should do it as soon as possible. In relation to DVA, every department has problems. We currently spend on our veterans, of which there are something like 600,000 in Australia, of which about 180, 200,000 are registered with DVA and supported either the veteran or the family by DVA. We currently spend about $11 billion on our veterans. It's hard to make it. You know, we had the Daily Telegraph in Sydney ran a suicide veteran forum at the end of the year before last, and a notable made the statement, someone who should know, and I totally agree with it. If you're going to be a veteran, Australia is the best place to be a veteran in. For all the faults that we might have, we treat our veterans better than any country. I did an 18-month inquiry into this as a senator, and I came out with a range of recommendations, almost every one of which, by the time we came out with it, had already been implemented. So, yeah, everything's got problems, but there are many, many veterans out there who are benefiting very, very well from DVA. There will always be individuals who don't consider that they are, and maybe that they're not being well treated. So, Dia, I should finish on that note.
That's fine. Hey, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. That was Senator Jim Molan finally on my channel because he was so scared of me. Just kidding. I'm so scared of my reputation. Just proceed.
You are a terrifying person, dear. Hey,
well, guys,
thank you very much. That was good fun, and thank you. And I hope it was of interest to your viewers as well.
It was. I'm glad Emma Eros recommended you. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye. See you later.
See you later. How do I get out of this? End broadcast. There we go.